Hi, Alan Cox here. I've always been of the opinion that when it comes to deploying labels, particularly those that either are custom sensitivity types, like in our case, we're going to look at a patient ID or maybe a customer account number, or even built-in types like credit cards, social security numbers, things like this. I've kind of never really believed it's a best practice to leave that up to the end user to determine what label should be applied. If you know what the classification is, then an auto policy should be created to deploy a label to put the proper controls on those documents, those emails, or those meetings. That's what we're going to talk about today is creating a auto policy for a sensitivity label. Let's get started. All right, now we want to do a label policy, but this time it's going to be an auto policy. So we have created some sensitive information types. We'll recap real quick here. Just as we look, we go to Purview here. We're purview.microsoft.com. We're going to go to Solutions. We're going to go to Information Protection. And then from there, I'm going to go into Classifiers. I'm going to go to, we've got an EDM classifier we created a while back. We'll see that show up here as we do a sensitive information type. Just real quick here. And here I'm just going to do, say, patient, right? And here's that EDM classifier, but I also created a sensitive information type when we did a custom type earlier. And I did this just called patient ID record. And so the way we did this and created this is just using some expression here. And so the pattern that we were using here is essentially, we'll look at this, is essentially 3 digits, with a dash, followed by 6 digits, something like that. That might be the pattern that we're using here. And so that is, and then any supporting elements that we could put in here, and that would basically be a hit, right? So that's a sensitive information type that we're looking at here. And so then we created a policy with that, but that policy just makes it show up in an Office document that would allow us to, an Office document that would allow us to apply that particular label. Now, in this case, what if we don't want to rely on the users to deploy this label or to apply the label, but we want to make sure that when there's a match in a document, in an email, in a SharePoint site, whatever it may be, whatever we apply it to, the policy and auto policy is automatically going to attach that label, and then any results that come from that label, whether it's a control list, watermarking, whatever we've put on that label, right? So that's what we're going to look at today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go here into information protection. We're going to go to policies here. We're going to do auto labeling policies. Now, when you create a label, you do get the option to deploy that through an auto policy there as well. So at the end of creating a label, it offers you the opportunity to create that label policy. Now, I tend to not do that, not deploy it there, and just go back in and do an auto label policy. So I've already got one here. We're going to go in and we're going to create a new one here. I'm going to create an auto labeling policy. And this particular one here, we're just going to do custom here. That's just generally what I do. It just gives me, all the options that I really want to do here. But what we're going to do is we're going to call this, I'm going to make sure I describe this in some way by the name, ALP, so maybe auto labeling policy, and maybe a patient ID. And so then I'm just going to give it some meaningful description. Auto applied label when patient ID is in document, something like that. Whatever might work for your environment. So there we go. And document, got that, good. Next. And now we're going to select the label that we want to use. And for this auto label policy, I've got this patient ID label we've created. That's it. I'm going to go next here. We're going to do admin units. We're going to go to the locations here. Now on locations, I could choose, emails, SharePoint sites, or OneDrive accounts. I'm just going to do documents this time, basically sites and documents. Either way, they pretty much looks about the same. Now here we get an option to common rules versus advanced rules, and all this means is if I want to make SharePoint sites rules different than the OneDrive accounts as it relates to this label. In this case, I'm going to do common rules. One set of common rules for all locations. Common rules consist of conditions for specifying what sensitive info to detect and whether to apply the label. To items shared inside or outside the organization, etc. So I'm going to go next here. And then we're going to go ahead and create this common rule. And this rule here is just going to be auto labeling policy, patient ID rule. Okay, nothing really too crazy there. Now the conditions here, when content contains, and I can do any number of these, but when the content contains sensitive information type of patient ID record. So when the data that is or the sensitive type patient ID record is a hit in a document, it's going to apply this label. So hopefully that makes some sense there. And so we're going to go ahead and save this. So that's just a common rule. So that's going to apply regardless of SharePoint or OneDrive. And so I can go in and edit this rule, and we can look and see if there's anything we want to change here. We've got patient ID record, so we're doing an instance count of 1 to any. So we could add, if it's only one, we don't necessarily want that to be applied, but in this case it's 1 to any, so that's fine. So we're going to go here and we're going to go next, and that's going to ask us about policy mode. So it's going to run in simulation. That is default. You cannot turn the policy on by default. When it runs in, we'll gather in items that match. It's highly recommended to review these items to decide whether the policy needs to be refined or needs to be turned on. You can automatically turn on the policy if nothing's been modified after 7 days in simulation. The 7-day period will restart each time the policy is modified. So hopefully that makes sense there, or we can just leave the policy off. But I'm going to go ahead and run it in simulation mode here. And then we can automatically turn this policy on after that. Now, if I go into edit, restarts at 7-day clock, basically. We're going to create this auto labeling policy. So that is pretty much that. Now, if we want to see in this particular case, when that label gets applied, what happens to the documents we're gonna that it may be attached to. So we're gonna take a look, and we'll just go back and look at the label and see what it says. So it's whatever the rule is within the label. There we go. So we're gonna go done here, and we'll go back and look at that sensitive information type, and just we'll take a closer look at that particular not the sensitive information type. I apologize. The label itself. We'll take a look at the label. In patient ID, we're going to edit the label. So it's pretty much going to stamp it and say it's going to be orange, which kind of gets a little higher on my sensitivity chart, if you will. It can be used in all of these locations, basically. We've only applied it through auto labeling as files and sites, basically. But and remember, on this particular label, if you recall, we actually kind of opened it up to everything so we could see all of the controls. So there's some access control, which basically the access control just means everybody, we are allowing co-author permissions here, but essentially the permissions here are editor rights to pretty much everybody in the organization. We didn't really do a whole lot of changing there. As far as watermarking, we do add content watermark. So we did internal only as a customized header and footer. So any document that this label would be auto applied to would get that header and footer as well. And then of course any rules in a Teams meeting, if this were applied to a Teams meeting, this would be the regardless of what the settings were in for that meeting. This, if this label gets applied, that's what would basically take precedence here. But we didn't apply it to the meetings in this case, and same thing with again, we can auto labeling for files. And this is what I meant when we get to the end of creating a policy or a label. You get the option to go ahead and do an auto label, and it will basically spin up the wizard to create an auto label policy, which we already did, right? So I'm going to go next here, so I've already doing that. And then just different applications and controls around groups and sites. And so anyway, so that's kind of what the label does. So essentially what we've done is we have automatically, without user interaction, said if a document or a site contains that match, that patient ID match, the sensitive information type, which is 3 characters dash 6 or 6 digits, 3 digits dash 6 digits, then I want you to apply this label automatically. And then these controls will be applied automatically to those documents and sites in this case. And then we've got sharing access and controls and so forth. That's what's applied to the label itself. So this is, we're just looking at the label itself. So anyway, so that is how we deploy create an auto label policy and deploy a label. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I thank you for watching.